Hello, welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized, where we present for your learning, my learning, individuals who have been there, done that, and who have experienced a number of things throughout their life, both personally and professionally, and have stepped forward in a manner of which we all can learn some valuable information, lessons, and tools to add to our leadership toolbox. I'm so pleased and honored to have joining this week my good friend, Mr. Scott Taylor. As you can see with his title page here on the screen, he is with Davis County Public Schools located in the great state of Kentucky. Mr. Taylor, good day, my friend. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking your valuable time to join us.
Thank you so much. Good morning to you.
Before we dive into the leadership questions, Mr. Taylor, why don't you introduce yourself, the role you play with the Davis County Public Schools?
All right. My current role is the Student Services Coordinator. That is my overarching responsibility. One of my key roles is to do diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, working in attendance, working as a homeless liaison. I do a little bit of everything. I kind of have a if you will, resume when it comes to working here at Davis County. Now, I am not from the great state of Kentucky. I'm originally from the great state of Oklahoma. So I started my educational career there in 1994 in my hometown of Anadarko, Oklahoma, at Anadarko Middle School. But concurrently, as an educator, I was also in the Army Reserves. I did about 7 years active duty, but total, I did 30 years of service. Just recently retired, I say 2022. So it'll be 2 years since I retired from the military. So 30 years experience in the military as a commissioned officer, retired at the rank of lieutenant colonel. Not that means a lot, but I tell you what, I earned every bit of that as far as what I've done, the assignments that I had. Most notably, did a deployment in Iraq in 2004, 2005, and served my country honorably. And I would do the same thing again. I wouldn't trade a minute as far as serving, and just miss the people that I've served with that are still out there wearing that uniform and doing a great job. I was in education twice. So I left education after I got back from Iraq. I took a position at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin as what's called a military technician. And then the unit that was at Fort McCoy relocated to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Therefore, that was my glide path to Kentucky, and I've been in Kentucky since then. I returned into education 2011, got my certifications for state of Kentucky, and then landed my first position back in education at Davis County as social studies teacher at College View Middle. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then I landed the job at central office. Here I am in a doctoral program, very excited about that. Personally, I have 2 children. My son, Jeffrey, he's a sophomore at Oklahoma State, majoring in music performance. And then my daughter, Olivia, she is going to be graduating this year from Collinsville High School. All of my kids will be out of high school. They're pretty much adults. They're part of the reason I get up in the morning, and just that's who I am. And those are my experiences thus far.
Lieutenant Colonel Taylor, a number of questions pop up. What an impressive resume. And just for those of you watching or listening, Mr. Taylor and I have become acquainted through his doctoral work as he works to earn his educational doctorate in educational leadership at a university that I'm very familiar with. Mr. Taylor, the first question that jumps out at me, how difficult was the decision to be either a cowboy or a Sooner, or is it pretty cut and dried in the state of Oklahoma, one or the other?
Okay, let me clarify that for you. So I grew up in southwestern Oklahoma, and most people in southwestern Oklahoma grew up as Oklahoma Sooner fans. And as a young kid growing up in the early 70s, I grew up watching the Oklahoma Wishbone. They say that Darrell Worrell, he created the wishbone, but Barry Switzer perfected it. So I grew up watching that. And also Oklahoma State has some good athletes as well. But my allegiance is Sooner, and I usually go to a game every year and see them. I went to the Cincinnati game last year. So no, it's not a hard decision. It's not a hard decision, but I support both teams in some ways.
Good for you.
Knowing that my son goes to Oklahoma State now, you have to understand that when I visited him for their homecoming. I took a photograph with him doing the pistol peak, guns up, those kind of things. So don't tell anybody I did that, but I did.
I, I I would imagine when the Cowboys and Sooners play, it's unlike any other rivalry game in that aspect. Have you ever had a chance to attend one of those in the fall?
I never did, but I just know how it was the week of when I was an administrator in Ponca City, Oklahoma. Most of my teachers were Oklahoma State teachers, and so I would intentionally go to every classroom that week and I would hand out Oklahoma pencils. And we had this talk about excellence. And I told them, I said, it's not about the consensus All Americans. It's not about the Heisman Trophy winners or the national championships. When you write with this pencil, I want you to think about excellence. So we had fun with that. And then one day I came in and they had orange and black balloons in my office, fine Oklahoma State. So did not go to the game, but the other events that transpired around Bedlam Week, yeah, I experienced that.
Good for you. And listen, congratulations and thank you for your service military
Thank you, sir.
wise, as well as education and just life. A number of things have impressed me as we've gotten to know one another these past few years, Mr. Taylor, and largely just your commitment to service. I'm sure that played a part from a military piece, but so much admiration. And that lieutenant colonel does matter in that piece because
Yes.
I think it tells me the experiences you've had have molded the individual that we're getting a chance to meet here today. Thank you for your time. But next week, you've agreed to come back for a second episode. But Mr. Taylor, talk to me about the military. Was that something that was always in your future from young teen years through the early adulthood?
I had a lot of people that made impressions on me. If I considered anyone my heroes, I know a lot of people say it's a sports figure or someone like that, but I had heroes within my family, primarily my father, my brothers, but then I had my grandfather, my uncles, they served in the military. And one uncle that I had notably, he just recently passed away. God bless him, Stanley. He would come home and he was usually stationed in Europe or Korea. He would come to the house and pick me up and take me to go out and eat and told me all these stories of how he served in the military, the things that he did. My grandfather, he served when the military was segregated, to when the military was integrated, served through the Vietnam War. I had a couple of uncles that served as well. When I was about to finish high school, I actually had a plan to go to the Air Force and to go enlisted because I wanted to be a weather person, a meteorologist. I had this heart to heart with my older brother, and he suggested that, hey, you should go to college and maybe go the ROTC route. I went to East Central University and did not pursue ROTC the first 2 years. But my sophomore year, I was at a crossroads. I was offered a partial tennis scholarship, and I actually chose ROTC. Not maybe I should have done both, but I just decided that I was going to focus on ROTC, and that was in the spring of 1990. And so that's, I think, one of the better decisions that I've made. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the military part that talks about retirement as a reservist. I won't receive my military retirement till I'm from ages 58 to 60 years old. And so when they told me what the calculation was, I thought about that day in 1990 when I decided to go the ROTC route. So from a standpoint of preparing for retirement, it was a good thing. Just from a standpoint of leadership, one of the best organizations I think anyone could be in as far as learning leadership. It wasn't perfect, but I learned so much. I learned things that I want to be, learned things that I didn't want to as well. But it really was a great ride as far as just seeing an organization of people that are serving their country, serving others, and really coming from an environment, my family, where we really do serve people. And as to me, I think that's just part of my DNA.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, my friend. You mentioned the ROTC. It's a program that's been around for a long time. Talk about the ROTC and what's the heart and focus of the program?
Really, the purpose for Reserve Officer Training Corps is to really build leaders when you think about it. Now, when we talk about the two groups that are in the military, you have the non-commissioned officers and you have the officers. The people that run the military is our NCOs. They're the backbone. And I learned so much from them. It just wasn't that I had a title or I had authority, but that I had to earn it. And they made sure that I earned every bit of it. At the same time, they knew that I could be better if I learned from them because they've been there and had experiences. You see, it takes you through the paces depending on when you get into their training. But I had a 2-year program. That 2-year program consisted of taking military science classes, whether it was marksmanship, whether it was land navigation, whether it was military history. Then you had training that you went to, the leaders training course. Then you had the advanced training course where you would go and they would evaluate you as a leader, put you in an individual leadership role or put you in a collective leadership role and do those things. And then the culmination is that you become a commissioned officer, either active duty or reserve. In either one, you've really come out with some great training. Now, I am biased as far as when we talk about reserve officers and National Guard, because my last assignment as an instructor of Command General Staff College, I usually told reserve or National Guard officers they're the best officers in the world because they have to do 2 jobs. They have to work a 9 to 5 during the week. Then they have obligations that they still have to meet. They still have to take a PT test. They still have to qualify with their assigned weapon. And so you have to do both of those things versus a person that's on active duty and that's all that they do. I think I had the best of both worlds, being an educator, being a soldier, and I think it helped me in both aspects. And again, I talked to my son about this. He's an aspiring musician, and I told him, I said, hey, listen, you don't have to be a starving musician. You can really go and serve at the same time, continue to use your skill and your passion as a musician. But so many things that you can do, and really enjoyed the time that I served in ROTC.
I can hear today during our conversation right here, Mr. Taylor, and each and every time we spoke, the passion and the positivity you bring. And you mentioned military. You talked a bit about the family heritage, and it seems like military was just, hey, it was the path Scott Taylor was going to be on, and
Yes.
you were very comfortable with that. And I heard you say other basic earlier, maybe in other words, but no regrets at all. Talk about your focus on becoming an educator. Where did that part come from?
I'll tell you what, my family were either preachers or teachers. And so my oldest brother, Eddie, he went into education after he finished at East Central. That's the college that I went to. And a great story on that. There is a person there, his name is Dr. Gerald Williamson. I faintly remember him when in 79, he came to visit Anadarko High School. And I was with Eddie and they were having a college night. And he said, hey, I'm Dr. Gerald Williamson. I want you to come to East Central University. And then in 1988, he comes to Anadarko High School and says, hey, Scott, I know you. I know your brother. And he still works in that capacity, Dr. Smith, and just still reaching out to kids and getting them to come to that great university. So I initially had a major in political science. I was studying. I was like, hey, don't want to be a meteorologist, want to be a lawyer. And it was my sophomore year. A lot of things happened my sophomore year, and my brother was down for a homecoming game. And he's in my dorm room. He's, hey, listen, you should go into education. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be like, follow your footsteps. And one of the things that as I get older, that when I do talk to people that are younger, talk to kids or students, the importance of really following a legacy. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand individuality. I understand going by the beat of your own drum. But to really travel the road that someone has paid for you is very significant. And we should really be intentional in talking to our youth about following a path that has already been blazed for them. And so I think that's important. But I still finished my bachelor's degree, political science. Then that summer, I went and did my military training. I went to infantry officer basic course at Fort Benning, which now is called Fort Moore. Then after I finished that, I'm back in my hometown. I'm working at Walmart. I'm working for my parents. I'm doing Army Reserve. And then I'm doing a little substitute teaching. There was a week where I subbed for a week. I was at Mission Elementary, subbed for fifth grade. And at the end of the week, the principal came down to my classroom and we were talking, and he had this kind of strange look. And I said, "Hey, what's going on, Mr. Myers?" And he said, "Scott, this is the worst class I have in the building. And you didn't send one kid down to the office." And I said, I just gave him a simple rule. I said, this could either be our classroom or my classroom. Oh, and so he said, "Have you ever thought about being an educator?" I said, "Oh, here we go." So it always seemed to catch me. It always seemed to come at the forefront through other people. And so really, I'd have to say it was divine providence. I really believe that. So long story short, I landed a position at the middle school, at Anadarko Middle School. And again, it was just incredible time being in a classroom. I also coach, but I did a couple of things, wrote some grants. We did some orienteering courses. Those little pluggers before they were called GPS, we used those. This was back in 1996 for technology and things like that. So did some really good things in the classroom. And I just always had a sense of what type of experiences can we provide for kids that can last them a lifetime, whether it's a college visit or it's just different things that they're going to remember that made an impression on them. So let's go from 2000, when I got my first administrative job, to 2010, because I was out of education and I was living in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And things were going pretty tough. At home, they were tough. I was crawling to Cadet Command where I worked, then I was crawling back home because things just weren't going very well, unfortunately. But I was on Facebook night and I was talking to a former student, one of my first students. His name was Michael. And Michael was a special education kid, had a speech impediment, stuttered, but the kid loved history, just loved history. And we were talking World War II or something like that. And I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, don't let anyone ever tell you what you can or cannot do." I said, "There's a lot of things you'll be able to do one day, Michael." When we were talking at that time, he was finishing his fifth year as a social studies teacher in Oklahoma City Public Schools. And he sent the next text and said, "I'm going to become an administrator. And I just want to thank you for making that difference." And I tell you what, I got emotional. I shed a tear or two at that computer. And I said to myself, I'm missing my calling. I'm missing my purpose. And so at that point, I started making preparations to go back into education. So that's why I'm here right now. I got back in the game and I'm so glad I'm here.
Thank you so much, my friend. Wow. What a great story. Impactful. You hit upon a number of points that I want to get into with you in next week's episode, but
Yes,
the
sir.
opportunity and the experiences you've had both in the military and in education and just in life have provided so many positive impacts. And I appreciate you sharing those stories a moment ago about how those have been brought back to you, so to speak, at least in a little bit of form, because many times as leaders or as educators, we don't necessarily see the impact or maybe not know the
No,
impact that's
absolutely.
being made. And the impact may be something that we just start, right? And somebody else completes 5 years, a decade or so down the road, if you will. My friend, you bring such a positive influence for me and for everyone watching and for those that are so blessed to have you working around you and around them there at Daviess County Public Schools. I want to dive more into that next week. But again,
Okay.
thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with us. Thank you for all you've done and keeping all of us safe and in representing and serving our military and the sacrifices you've made there. My friend, more than anything, thank you for the vulnerability and sharing from the heart
Appreciate it.
your experiences.
That's
My
right.
friend, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Take care.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you.
All
And
right.
thank you for watching this episode of Leadership Synergized with my friend Scott Taylor. We're going to talk more with Scott next week. I hope you're able to join us. Remember, to move forward, we don't always have to be in a rush. Stillness can take us a long way in life. Still isn't about standing still. Still is about moving forward with peace through serving others, transforming and influencing, and leading with love from the heart and in everything we do. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.